Lorenzo's Oil, one of the great movies of 1992. I remember going to the theater and watching it, of course, because it had a science base, so I was very interested in it. It is the story of a young boy, Lorenzo Odone, who is struck with a terrible disease, adrenoleukodystrophy. It strikes boys between the ages of 4 and 10 and ends up paralyzing them. Usually they die within a few short years. His parents, Augusto and Michela Odone, refuse to accept that there's nothing that can be done for their son. So they start going to the library, they look up scientific journals, even though they have no scientific background. They're just searching. And they come upon a paper published in Poland that gives them a little bit of hope. Because this paper shows that it is possible in rats to prevent such diseases by giving them a certain type of oil. Which brings us to the chemical explanation for what is going on in this terrible disease. As you know, I like to use models of molecules to try to explain things. We eat a lot of fats, and fats are composed of long chains of carbon atoms. And some of them are saturated, which means there are no double bonds in the molecule. Some of them have double bonds. Anyway, the problem in this terrible paralytic disease is that there's a certain kind of fat that builds up in the plasma of the blood, and it takes away the protective layer around nerves. Now, these are called long-chain fatty acids for a good reason. They contain at least 22 carbon atoms in the chain. You can count them. I did. They're there. And when you have a buildup of these molecules, it is devastating to the nervous system because I said it breaks down the myelin, the protective sheath. Well, in this paper, in the Polish publication, the authors showed that if you give the animals much shorter chain fats that contain a double bond in the molecule, so-called unsaturated fats, then the enzymes that normally produce the long-chain fatty acids will occupy themselves by metabolizing the shorter chain ones. So the idea was to give the animals the short chain ones, prevent them from making the long chain ones, and solve the problem. So the Odones read about this. They actually organized a conference inviting speakers from around the world who had expertise in this. And they concluded that this was worth a try. So they concocted something called Lorenzo's Oil, which is a mixture of short chain unsaturated fats derived from olive oil and from rapeseed oil. And they started giving this to Lorenzo. And he survived longer than anyone expected. He even got better a little bit. And the story was romanticized in the movie in the sense that he didn't really get as much better as the movie showed. But nevertheless, it was interesting because he went on to live for 32 years, which is totally unexpected for someone suffering from that disease. So it is an interesting story. I say he went on to live for 32 years. What kind of a life was that? He was immobile, paralyzed, fed through a feeding tube. But maybe it was the constant care that was given him by his father and his mother that allowed for him to live that long. Anyway, it's a fascinating chemical story because it is explained by something as relatively simple as the length of the carbon chain in the fatty acid. So again, to summarize, the long-chain fatty acid was the problem. It is constructed in the body by enzymes from shorter chains that we get in the diet. But if the diet includes lots of shorter chain ones with a double bond in it, the enzymes that would form the longer chain are occupied digesting these, and therefore there's no buildup of the long ones and no progression of the disease. Certainly a fascinating chemical story, but nevertheless, it is not a cure for the disease at all, although there's a silver lining to the cloud, because it turns out that in boys who have the genetic variant that would cause this disease, if they are diagnosed early and are given Lorenzo's oil before symptoms appear, the symptoms can be prevented from appearing. Interesting story, although sad ending with the death of Lorenzo, and the parents have also died since then. So that's the update on the movie Lorenzo's Oil.